Okay, I've let that dry, and now I'm going to do the water. Now, a lot of people, when they think water, they think blue. The sea's blue, the sky's blue. Well, if your sky is kind of a little bit more moody, it's a little bit kind of greyish, then perhaps you should think about reflecting that in the sea. If you're, painting a Mediterranean scene and the sky is, fantastically bright blue, then your sea was likely to be bright blue or even turquoisey. But in a kind of a more dulled, particularly this kind of British scene, then it's going to be a little bit more dull. So I'm not going to necessarily run to use pure blue. We're going to just, again, play with the mixture of the sort of, it was sepia and cobalt blue that we used in the sky. So let's just mixture of those two. Now, if you remember, one of the effects that I was talking about in the previous videos was the idea of doing some dry brush across, and which we could look at. So how did I do that? I made the brush, the paint sort of dampish on the brush, take the excess off and then push the brush outwards so it becomes slightly more splayed, and then see if you can drag that or test the mark on the tape or another piece of paper. Then I'm thinking horizontally across here because I want to stop below that headland if possible. Practice that mark a few times. Don't just slapping in and it's up at a 30-degree angle. Try to get it flat, almost mock play it. Do it a few times until you're confident with it, and then make the marks across. And I might do a few of those so it looks like it's perhaps catching the sunlight. Now, we also looked at like little sort of seed marks, so let's maybe look at doing some little lines to seeds into this, because I want to give it just a bit more interest than just the dry brush this time round. And those little marks I'm keeping horizontal, so all of this is, the predominance is towards a horizontal mark. And I'm just basically placing the brush down with a few little kind of seed marks. Now as they come towards me, I'm going to make those a bit bigger, so they're a little bit more of a definite, daring mark. And I might just do some little ones in amongst the dry brush, which probably looks then like there's just a very slight up and down undulation to the sea. And I'm not going to get in at this point to explaining all of the way that the sea is moving, because otherwise I think it'd be too complicated. I'm just going to illustrate this as if it's pretty calm. Let's take that same kind of colour, just put a little bit more water on the brush there. And now I'm going to go back to the castle, and I'm just going to do the same kind of sideways blocking movement that we did when we were doing those very first shape making exercise. All I've done there is try to illustrate that there's some kind of shadow on the forms of the rock making up the castle. I don't have to start doing windows and all the rest of it. I'm not going to do that. Now let's take some of the blue that we were using, that was the cobalt blue, and I'm going to put that with a little bit of lemon yellow here, predominantly towards the blue really in the mix. And I'm going to go back to my castle because it's got some dunes in front of it, and I'm going to paint that underneath there. I might start with a general line, and then what I'm looking for is basically taking that kind of seed shape idea that I was doing in the water, and I'm aiming that downhill, but leaving perhaps some bits so that it looks like that's the sand in between in the dunes. Now I might make, if you're doing a spit of land like that, it's a good idea to make most of it predominantly fall towards the end, so that basically the marks go that way. As it's coming a little bit nearer to you, you start to illustrate that the dunes are coming up and down. So I might make some of the marks come and then turn this way, and then they start and move back the other way again. And every so often you roll them over, leave the odd gap, and then roll them back the other way. Again, little kind of dabs, seed marks, adding together the seed marks, which will make some kind of dunes quite quickly and easily. I'm then going to take the blue, take away the green, a little bit of the blue, a little bit of the sepia again, water that down quite a long way, and what I now want is just a hint of shadowing from the sky. So I'm going to just pull that through on the same kind of line, So we'll have some of this. So all I'm doing here is making the look of some shadow marks on the sand. And I could actually, if I was daring, and if this is dry here, make some of that appear that it actually goes onto the sea as well. As if these shapes of the sky have made the shadow marks. It's quite a good idea to do this because it basically holds something down on top of your previous sand. If you love the way that you painted the sand, then you only do a little bit of this. But it does help, and especially if some of them kind of join up a touch as it moves forward. Let's make that again. Let's have some of this come on here. Maybe I'll shadow a little bit into the water now, and then across. Just going to make a little bit more of that, maybe a little bit more daring in how dark I'm going to do elements of that across. That'll hold that down nicely. I might do a little bit of that kind of shadowing here and forwards. It's just a good way of almost, it breaks the beach into bands. It's also a way of almost illustrating distance, which is quite useful. Now, if I just keep painting and painting, what will happen here is that I'll lift the previous layer. So what do I need to do now? Yeah, you've guessed it, stop. I'll let that dry a little bit, and then I'll work on top of it, creating some rocks and a few little pieces, and then it will hold down. So again, don't just keep going. Just don't keep going. Just hold your horses, put the brush down. Key bit in the process, put the brush down. Okay, leave it. Okay, I'll let that dry.